I'm reading today from the book Path to Happiness, and we're studying the keyword reflection. And this relates to the primary word in the 7-word system of sorry, and in the book of Path to Happiness to the chapter in our life which I've called being. Often a word that seems to apply to two different meanings in fact reveals by artful ambiguity that the meanings are not really different at all, but together suggestive of a hidden truth. The word reflection is used to describe what we see physically when we look at a special piece of glass, and also what we perceive mentally through contemplation of events and feelings. These are disconnected activities, and yet when unified by their shared name, they point to one of life's most beautiful secrets. The difficulty we have in revealing this secret lies in two things. Firstly, we have been brainwashed into a belief in our own powerlessness, that we are subject to external causes, a frail, impotent being in a terrifying world overseen by a ruthless God. Secondly, it goes against an even deeper illusion about the very nature of substantial reality itself, which is explained by Hindu concepts and quantum mechanics, but poorly understood by the Western layperson. It takes faith, training, meditation and contemplation, usually in combination, to realize within what has been taught for thousands of years in the East and decades in the West, that the observer influences the observed. Leading-edge physicists and ancient mystics at last agree with each other in all but nomenclature, although the scientists are less ready to admit this. The reality in which we live is not as it seems to us, but to a mystic, as to a physicist, it is a field of energy in various forms and vibrations, some beyond the perceptual capacity of normal people, which changes in response to an observer's attention. Because of this, it is not meaningful to say whether light, therefore energy, is a thing or a probability, a particle or a wave. Like Schrodinger's cat, it is both dead and alive, material or subtle, according to what you look for. If you seek particle, you find particle. If you seek wave, you find wave. Didn't Jesus say something similar? Life itself is this field of uncommitted energy, waiting to give form, to express whatever it is we are looking for. It is nothing other than a reflection of what our mind expects to find, a mirror, therefore. When we contemplate life, we are doing the reverse process, moving from the external world into the world of mind. Therefore, life is the reflection of mind, and the mind reflects upon life. Each is a mirror of the other. Instead of investing our sense of self in externals, we have the option to become self-reflective. In this case, we identify ourselves with our feelings and qualities more than our achievements in the world. This is not denying the importance of successful endeavors, not at all, but just taking time to recognize what they mean. This is a recognized practice in Sufism called muhasabah, which carries a suggestion of embodiment of accountability. Put another way, we take a reckoning of our situations and notice how the body feels about them. Let's say we examine our lives according to 7 criteria and bring to mind our current situation and status, say health, social life, love life, work, creative projects, spiritual practice, and adventure. We might record that all is well, except that life feels a bit old and dull instead of fresh with new adventurous possibilities. What we do with this awareness is another question, but the awareness is priceless. Even if this is a little too formal, the wisdom that life is our feedback system. From observing and contemplating upon life what is occurring, we gain important clues about how to adjust our ideas and choices. if the lowly amoeba can adjust its direction when its intended path is unsatisfactory, then might we not try the same strategy? Also, one helpful device is to look back a year ago and remember what were our circumstances, feelings and attitudes then, and in what particular ways are we different now. If they are more or less exactly the same, then we might perhaps wonder why that is so. Is it because we have done nothing about being dissatisfied? It is part of our responsibility to optimize our own life through active endeavor and effort. The direction of changes or the lack of significant movement shows how well we are doing with this. There is another dimension to reflection which comes available in meditation. This is a technique that allows us to access more subtle aspects of mind. There are many ways to meditate, including, for example, mantric chanting, yoga, and guided journeys. Through them, the mind settles into a calmer state, its grasping busyness at rest. Perhaps the most direct is the practice of watching the breath. We simply focus our thoughts on the physicality of breathing, noticing the air movement and its effect upon the body. When extraneous thoughts occur, we return the attention to the breath. The ability to do this develops with practice, and very few beginners slip into it immediately, yet the rewards are worth the effort. Because of the principle of resonance, it is certainly easier, much easier, to meditate with others. We find that, briefly at first and later for sustained periods, we can touch another world of perception. The gross mind, the monkey mind, is mercurial and shifts like the wind, unless we find the discipline to concentrate. In meditation, the subtle mind reveals itself when the grasping mind is at rest. It is always there and functional, but its voice is so quiet that it remains unheard until the monkey mind stops chattering, which is almost never. Perhaps just before sleep or quietly in nature we can touch into this state of mind. Normally, though, an experienced meditator can access it very quickly by changing their focus of attention and breathing rhythm. The gross mind mostly seeks to project fantasies upon the outer world, or analyze matters so that reality is circumscribed by definition and compared to what is known. The subtle mind doesn't do that. It observes with peripheral attention, not concentrating on the detail, but allowing revelation of the whole picture, thus seeing the hidden connections and patterns of influence between things. This alternative mode of perception is centered in peace. There is no excitement, no desire or curiosity. It is beingness. Over days, months and years, the deepening builds, and we find that the benefits are truly remarkable. In normal daily life, the mind becomes untroubled, clear and open. Situations resolve quickly and easily, and whatever we take on is more straightforward. The time it takes to realize our desire tends to shorten, yet the availability of time itself expands, contradicting those who complain they have not the time to sit still for 20 minutes each day. Without effort or intention, such feelings as anger, resentment, anxiety and confusion soften, then slowly drift away. What also occurs is that we see the way things really are in life. The fog clears. Contemplation is a related function of mind and arises out of meditation whenever a thought is intentionally introduced into the subtle mind. The thought itself comes from the gross mind, but is gently planted like a seed into the subtle mind, so that new insights can be revealed. With familiarity of this process, we can learn to employ the subtle mind rather than the analytical gross mind to facilitate our understandings. This is especially important when the subject of our contemplations are not always suitable for analysis and left brain thinking, such as questions of spirituality, relationship and feelings.
So the first question I have is on reading the text from The Path to Happiness. I discovered that you, James, had changed one of the keywords from remorse to reflection. And I was absolutely fascinated by that, in that I don't understand, why it became reflection. Because I think, like I intimated in my email to you, remorse has inherent in it responsibility and self-reflection on one's own responsibility in what's been created. And reflection, I didn't feel was so necessarily so. And I wondered what kind of process you went through to change that keyword from remorse to reflection.
Yes, the change has been made. I used to use the word remorse, and now I'm using the word reflection for different purposes, though. What we have to understand is that the 7-word system is defined by 7 primary words. If you're using those 7 words, then you're using the 7-word system. However, in order for us to apply the system in different fields of endeavor, such as personality, relationship, business management, and whatever else, the keywords that we use may well change to some extent. And also this is true if we go to a foreign country. Some of the keywords don't translate very well. So it has to be understood, I think, that the keywords are not fixed like the primary words are. The keywords are a variable phenomenon. And if we consider the word remorse in the context of personality and self-awareness, it's very meaningful indeed. It implies that we feel something is wrong and we want to do something about that feeling, because it's just a reminder that we don't feel clear of conscience. Very appropriate, the word remorse. But to take that word remorse as a keyword for the word sorry into the frame of business management, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Business managers don't really feel remorse for having made wrong decisions. They reflect upon their decisions and they notice from the feedback that they get that that decision was suboptimal. That's the result of their reflection. And so they do something about it. There's no sense here of remorse, because remorse kind of suggests we have blame and guilt to defend against. Remorse is on that wavelength of blame and guilt and conscience and so on, which just isn't appropriate in some fields of endeavor like business management. There's another understanding also that we could look at, that the word reflection, when taken at a high spiritual level, is equally free of emotion. There's no emotionality, it's emotionally neutral reflection. And if you've reached that spiritual station where you just don't have any blame, any guilt left within you, you've moved beyond those things, then actually remorse isn't what you feel. You just reflect on what you've done. You've noticed that it caused an issue for someone else, and you reflect upon that and decide not to do that again. You could handle that better. You don't want to cause anybody any disturbance, so next time you'll handle it better because you've reflected upon it. It's not appropriate for that highly advanced spiritual person to feel remorse, because the other party, the one that triggered your behavior, that caused them a feeling which they didn't like, the other party has responsibility for that feeling, not you. In some ways, feeling remorse for another person is an imposition at that very high level of spiritual awareness.
So I think what you're saying in that is reflection is almost like a higher state of remorse, in the way that it is about being very honest with oneself as to, what is occurring, but it's not necessary. It's more neutral in a way than taking the remorse in. It's emotionally neutral. Would you say that if you were using reflection as a keyword for sorry in a relational sense, that it would still be equally as useful as remorse?
Whether to use this keyword or that keyword when in a relationship counselling situation, I think is subject to your own judgment. It would depend upon the interaction you have with the client. If the client clearly is showing remorse, and that's what they want to process, or they cannot feel remorse, and they're definitely a person who feels responsible in the sense of a little bit of guilt, and they feel sensitivity to having caused hurt, they're on that level of spiritual awareness, then remorse is a good keyword to use. But if that person doesn't really have remorse in their thinking, that they are quite advanced spiritually, or they're just indifferent, it's just not appropriate in this situation, that's not a person I feel remorse about. They're outside of my inner circle of close people. I don't care whether I upset somebody else's feelings. Not my business. It's their business. Let them process their business. You know, in those cases, you could use reflection. I don't think the keywords are definitive. I think we choose them according to how we feel is appropriate in the moment. Now, the wazifa practice that seems to help us most of all attune to this high condition of feeling remorseful on reflection about the fact that we've done something insensitively and we could improve upon that. Subhanallah, whose meaning usually is translated as the purity of beingness, just being pure. Subhan contains the root syllable, very similar to the word tasbih. It's the same root syllable, and the tasbih is the prayer beads that we use. And this root keyword is praise. So the really kind of subtle meaning of Subhanallah is that we praise God best, or we could see it differently. We praise life most elegantly when we find the purity of our being. In other words, we're self-honest, we're authentic, we're sensitive and considerate. We have no evil thoughts about anything. We don't get judgmental, we don't blame, we don't revenge any situation. Purity of being, Subhanallah, 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 Subhanallah. Ameen.